Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. My name is Walter Gendell, and I am thrilled and honored to be your worship associate on this very beautiful Sunday morning. I'm glad to see you, whether you are here in the sanctuary or listening online. But before we begin, you guessed it, please take a moment to silence your cell phones before it rings. Thank you. So I'd like to start this morning with words from John Seuss, "To be of the earth." To be of the earth is to know the restlessness of being a seed, the darkness of being planted, the struggle toward the light, the pain of growth into the light, the joy of bursting and bearing fruit, the love of being food for someone, the scattering of your seeds, the decay of the seasons, the mystery of death, and the miracle of birth. And to be of this earth, let us now acknowledge that we gather today on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla people who have stewarded this land, this earth, throughout the generations. And that we also strongly commit to grow in our understanding and relationship with this land, our dependence on it, and with the people who inhabited it and nurtured it before our arrival. And as we strive to nurture our land, this earth, we also strive to nurture each other and to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person in this congregation. And what that means to all of you is that all of you are welcome. And you are welcome no matter what, no matter your sexual orientation, your gender identity, whether you are rich, whether you are poor, your immigration status, your race, religion, or culture, and particularly wherever you come from and whoever you love. But equally important, you are welcome, whether you are steady and composed, or you feel completely lost, or you don't know what you are feeling. This community has a place for you. Here you matter. Here you are loved. So come and learn and grow with us as we commit together to embrace the rich and beautiful diversity of the world. I invite all of you to help build a community centered in justice, in compassion, and in love. We are very grateful for your presence. All right, well, welcome to our church. Thank you. And please join us for coffee after our service. If you want to learn more about us, our programming, please contact the office at admin, ADMIN, at uucod.org, or visit our website, also uucod.org. And to make this even easier for you, you can see one of our wonderful members at the welcome table in the lobby after service. So now, let's take a deep breath as we calm our minds and our bodies while Reverend Ian rings the Tibetan bowl and we listen to the wonderful Eddie Clement play our music for centering to start the service.
Good morning. Jack, thank you. There are going to be lots of those, so. It is important to speak truth to power. Good morning and welcome, friends. We begin today's service with words adapted from the work of the Reverend Dr. William Schultz, who was former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association and former director of Amnesty International, United States. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of truth and let its curiosity spark your awareness. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. Friends, will you rise in body or in spirit as we sing together our opening hymn together as Tranquil Streams?
Kindred hearts and one tonight to build
So one of our most sacred rituals is the lighting of our chalice. For us, it signifies the creation of a sacred space where we gather together in community. So as Reverend Ian lights our chalice, let's speak the words on the screen above. In times of darkness, we stumble toward the tiny flame. In times of cold, we seek the warming fire. In times of repression, we seek for the lamp of truth. In times of loss, we pray for the comforting light. In times of joy, we light a candle of celebration. Spirit of life, as we kindle this light, help us find what we need this day. And so one of the ways we covenant with each other to both welcome everyone into our community and celebrate the worthiness of all people is to participate in a candle lighting ceremony in support of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, or BIPOC. I would like to invite Steve to come forward to join me as we light our BIPOC candles. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey together towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our principles so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. Thank you, Steve. There is a saying that is attributed to Mark Twain, though in reality, it may be from the 18th century literary figure Jonathan Swift, and it goes like this. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. Whether it's Mark Twain or Jonathan Swift, that saying is as true today as it was 200, or in Swift's case, 300 years ago. My first experience in understanding the power of truth happened when I was fairly young. I think I was around 10 years old. I was having one of my many, many arguments with my mother, and I used a profanity directed at her. I'm sure you can imagine what that was. She very calmly turned to me and said, "Do you know what that means?" Of course, I could have lied and said I didn't, but instead I told her the truth and said that I did, and even foolishly explained exactly what it meant. At which point, she whacked the side of my head and said, "Don't you ever use those words again," and then proceeded to also say, "And thank you, dear, for telling me the truth," which was of little consolation while there was still a ringing in my ear. In looking back, I realized that sharing your truth can sometimes be uplifting and satisfying, but also painful and difficult. But trying to seek out, understand, and follow the truth is very important to me, no matter how difficult, whether it's my being Jewish and learning the truth about the Holocaust at a very young age, dealing with the truth about my sexuality and coming out as a gay man, or even my being a product of the 60s and the don't trust authority generation. Determining what is the truth, my truth, based on facts and reasoning so I can hopefully do the right thing, continues to drive my behavior. I may not always get it right, but it isn't from a lack of trying. I think Thomas Jefferson said it best when he said, "Never fear to follow the truth. Never fear to follow the truth." When advising his 15-year-old nephew, Peter Carr, Jefferson encouraged him to follow the truth, justice, and plain dealing. He went on to say, "If you ever find yourself environed with difficulties and perplexing circumstances out of which you are at a loss how to extricate yourself, do what is right. Follow the truth, justice, and plain dealing, and be assured that that will extricate you the best out of the worst situations." What I've also found is that I am most attracted and committed to organizations that believe truth as a basic tenet of their organization. Hence my strong involvement, of course, with the Unitarian Church, but also becoming a Rotarian. In 2020, I joined the Rotary Club of Palm Springs. Rotary is a service organization. In fact, their motto is service above self. There are clubs worldwide, and they have done remarkable things, including the eradication of polio around the world. What I found most attractive is their four-way test that is recited at the beginning of every meeting, and it goes like this. of the things we say, think, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? This 24-word test was created as a statement by Rotarian Herbert J. Taylor for employees to follow both in their business and personal lives, and was adopted by the Rotary organization in 1943. The four-way test resonated with me when I joined Rotary, and it still does so today. And doesn't it sound a bit like being a Unitarian? For example, is it fair to all concerned? That is what we covenant. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Does it create a loving community? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Will it be inclusive and for everyone? And of course, seeking truth through reason was a main driver in my becoming a member of the Unitarian Church. What I find most attractive is that UUs don't tell you what is true. We help you discover what is true for yourself so you can tell your truth. And the belief that there is always more truth to be found. This is reinforced through our former fourth principle, which affirms the value of doubt. We can't believe everything we're told. Belief has to be passed through the fires of skepticism and boiled in the crucible of doubt. When we doubt, we acknowledge that our understanding of truth is imperfect. When we doubt, we strengthen our faith. I was recently listening to a sermon by Reverend Beth Dana of the First Unitarian Church of Dallas. She suggests you ask 3 questions before speaking a truth that might shake things up or be difficult to share. Something I wish I knew when I decided to speak back to my mother. I thought they were great questions you should always ask yourself as you share your truth with others. First, do you mean it? Is it something you actually believe? Second, can you defend it? Can you stand firmly in it and explain why you believe it to be true? And third, can you say it thoughtfully and with love? Is your intention good? Do I mean it? Can I defend it? And can I say it thoughtfully and with love? And if you can answer yes to all 3 of those questions, then you will be guided by the light of truth. Though our pledge drive has come to an end today, let us remember that supporting our church and the good works we do is a year-round effort. So as the ushers come around for the offertory, please give as generously as you can so we can continue to care for our wonderful, wonderful church for generations to come.
All of these things which feel like they're just us, and these things which are the whole world, sit with us. They live in our hearts, our minds, they live in our bodies each day. And so we pause and come together to share them, to share the load, to share the lightness, the joy and the sorrow together. The world around us calls to us so many ways. It calls for our attention, it calls for our action, it calls for our thought and our reflection. And so we pause today in the love of this community, holding in our hearts the people of this community, the people of our neighborhoods, all of the people of our nation, the people of the world, especially those living under the threat and the reality of war and destruction and violence today. We hold them in our hearts. We hold them in our hearts and are inspired to love, inspired to speak out for the sake, for the safety, for the health, for the protection of those who are being victimized, those who are being attacked. We hold those people in our hearts. And we hold in our hearts our leaders as well. We hold in our hearts our wish, our desire. We hold in our hearts our anger, our worry, our anxiety, and our hope that our leaders will find a way to decisions built in love, decisions built in trust, decisions built in hope, in kindness and care. We hold these hopes despite what we see in our world, because we know we are all held deeply by the vast glory of this cosmos, held deeply by the love of each other, the love of those who brought us here, the love of those who carry us forward, their love and their hope, their expectations and the possibilities that we bring together are the things that we hold in our hearts as we pause in the quiet and loving embrace of this community this morning. Let us be quiet in the face of this love. May all beings know peace. May all beings know an end to suffering. May all beings know love. Friends, will you join your voices together as we sing Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor, and then Jerry's going to come up and talk with us. Thank you, friends. Your voices are healing. Jerry is ready to come up and talk.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jerry Lamadou, and I have the pleasure and honor of serving on the board of directors as treasurer of the church. So this morning, what we're going to talk about is cheesecake. Just so you know, immediately after the service, we're going to be celebrating the end of our pledge drive, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But come out, and for those of you who don't like cheesecake, we have other things for you as well. So we have quite a variety this morning. So every February, we set aside a month to promote generosity and support for our community by asking members and friends and visitors, anyone basically, to promote an annual financial commitment to UUCOD. Prior to beginning our pledge drive, we start months and months before we actually begin the pledge drive. In October, our finance committee began talking about what we were going to do, what our theme was going to be, who our stewards were going to be, lots and lots of work. And then at the end of the year, and at the very beginning of the year, we pulled together a finance team, a budget team composed of representatives from the board of directors as well as the Finance Committee. And our sole job was to come up with a first draft of a budget. And when you look at it, that budget won't start until July 1st, and it won't end until June 30th of 2026. We're projecting out a year and a half forward, and we did a pretty good job, I think. But basically what we do is we ask people where we're going to be spending our money, and at the end of the day, we generally end up with a lot more in the expense column than we do in the revenue column. And the one thing that we wait for at the very end of the year is to determine what our pledge drive goal was. And this year, when we added up all of the expenses, and we looked at the revenues that we came in beyond, in addition to the pledge drive, we were short $215,000. That's a big number. That is 65% of our entire revenue budget for the year. So if we don't make our goals on pledges, as we did last year, we would have a deficit going forward. And last year we had a $19,000 deficit, which I'm happy to say we took care of this year and eradicated that deficit. So that's a long way of telling you how we sort of got. For the coming fiscal year, the Finance Committee and the board, projected the $215,000 in pledges. Our annual campaign ended on Friday, and as of yesterday, we had raised $210,000, $400. So we're $4,400 off. That being said, we still have people out there that we're looking for pledge forms from, which I'm sure will then, looking at those people and their previous pledges, I'm sure that's going to take us well above our $215,000 goal, and that's great news for us as a church. And we also have 2 more classes coming up where we will have pledges coming in. So we're in good shape. So obviously we have a lot to be thankful for. And I want to take a second just to point out a couple of things about the pledge drive that come up. The pledge drive touches everybody in our community. When we send out the first communication, we send it to everyone on our mailing list, asking them to support our church. And then from that, we cull down a list that we then give to our stewards, basically of members and friends that have pledged before or have contributed funds. We try to exhaust that as much as possible. And we ask people to come and join with us and be as generous as they can. There's a couple of stories like 2 stories I'll tell you. Many, many years ago, probably 5 years ago, on the day we started our pledge drive, I talked to someone. It was a visitor. And I was talking to him and his wife, and we got up and we announced the pledge drive. And after services at coffee hour, he came up to me and gave me a $3,000 check. And he said, "This is for your pledge drive. I'm pledging this year." And that was the last time I saw him. But he's pledged for the last 5 years. So that's pretty impressive. And every year I get a nice letter from him when I receive his pledge. The other one has to do with a congregant that has some financial challenges. This person probably has $1,000 a month in Social Security, and she has a little bit of savings. But when we talk to her about the pledge drive, she says, come get the pledge form. And she says, I can pledge $40 a month. And she does it every month, and she follows up with me and says, did you get my check? But when you think about what that $40 a month means to her, it's as great as someone giving us a $5,000 or a $3,000 pledge, because they can afford that $3,000. This is what that person can afford. And All we ask is that you pledge and you give as you're able. That's the key word here. Just a couple of things I wanted to thank. I want to thank the Finance Committee. They've done a great job. I want to thank the budget team that put the budget together. We then selected, I think, 12 stewards that worked with all of you this year, and they did an incredible job. And then we had the support of a lot of different committees: the membership committee, the stewardship committee, the hospitality team. The worship team helped us. We had people that got up and gave testimonials. We probably had, and of course, we had all the wonderful people that made soup, our soup luncheon. So we probably had somewhere between 50 and 60 people who actually contributed to the pledge drive with their time and their talent. And I want to thank all of you for doing that. So let's celebrate with a little bit of cheesecake today and see if we can break our goal.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you to all of you who have pledged, and thank you to all of you who continue to bring your gifts of time and talent, as well as your gifts of treasure here to this congregation. We are a community that cannot survive, cannot thrive without all of us working together in so many ways. In her novel called The Telling, which she wrote later in her life, Ursula Le Guin tells the story of a human anthropologist acting on behalf of an interstellar league of planets and of visiting a planet where the impact of connection with galactic neighbors has been massive repression in the service of a monopoly of corporate and military interests. This was written in the 1990s. Central to what this new regime has repressed is the ancient religious and philosophical practice, the system that formed the core of daily and community life of the people of this planet, that held the way they understood their history and time and culture and meaning and relationship collectively. That system, that practice, is called the telling, and it is rooted in just that, the telling of history and lives and legends and experience told over and over again, and in less repressive times, constantly growing and changing based on new experience and learning, working out truth and understanding together over time. For the people of this planet, their culture and their very existence is enlivened and given meaning by telling, the stories of their lives. And their ostensible planetary leaders are actively and violently repressing this practice and demanding that everyone tell a different story, that everyone submit to their story of pride and power and unity and control. They are striving to control reality by controlling which story is permitted or allowed or sanctioned. Timothy Snyder, historian and author of the books On Tyranny and On Freedom, in a posting to his online newsletter this past week, wrote these words when talking about Ukraine and Russia and the ways our current government is involved. He wrote, "The divide in politics today is between unreality and reality. Those who seek to rule the world blur human experience and smudge memory, making cooperation and friendship laughable and unthinkable. Rather than professors of truth, we are to serve as lonely nodes in a power network." And we saw the impact of this divide in the actions of our American leadership in the debacle of their meeting with the president of Ukraine earlier this week. That appalling spectacle was in the service of controlling the story that was being told about Russia's continuing attack on Ukraine, in the service of turning unreality into reality, in the service of controlling the truth. In On Tyranny, this book that I have talked about with you before, Snyder lays out many, many ways, 20 of them, in which we can all resist the encroachment of tyranny, authoritarianism, of fascism in our society. Believe in truth, he writes. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing is true, then no one can criticize power, because there is no basis upon which to do so. If nothing is true, then all is spectacle. When I hear people asking questions about truth, because I grew up in the Christian church, and because I grew up listening to Jesus Christ Superstar, both, and you laugh, but it's a serious thing. When I hear someone asking about truth, I hear the words of Pontius Pilate during his trial of Jesus saying, "And what is truth?" he says in the Gospel of John. And in the version of the story told by Tim Rice in the lyrics for Jesus Christ Superstar, Pontius continues, "And what is truth? Is truth unchanging law? We both have truths. Is mine the same as yours?" And it is true that we live in a world where we understand that different people and different groups have different experiences of a situation, that there might be different perspectives on an occurrence or an experience. We might have a conversation that leads to a disagreement, and you might understand how we got to that disagreement or who is responsible in a really different way than I do. We might watch the same movie or television show or listen to the same sermon as our next door neighbor and come away with vastly different experiences and feelings about it. I might find it cheerful and uplifting, and you might find it banal and mindless. I've talked to you before about the ways that different communities experience events in life differently than other communities, that women experience a very different world often than men do, that people of color have a different experience in our communities than white folks do. Those who are struggling financially experience the basic facts of living in the communities we share very differently than those with enough money or wealth do. We can share time together and experience it differently. But there are facts and truth in the larger world and in our smaller lives, and one of the practices of totalitarian governments and systems and leaders is to whittle away at our commitment and adherence to those truths. My colleague, the Reverend Jake Morrow, held up this destabilizing truth as a really good way to be a totalitarian. He wrote that wannabe totalitarians should undermine sources of objective information and impartial perspective, should attack journalists, scientists, government employees, and judges, smearing them all as biased, untrustworthy. Totalitarians should work toward a truth that's subjective, malleable to your will. He wrote this in 2016. And we have seen this more and more over the past years, demonizing journalists who disagree or ask difficult questions, getting rid of government employees in positions where they can put checks on executive power, sharing lies about immigrants, accusing your political opponents of crimes you yourself have committed, shutting down scientific agencies whose work challenges your commitments to unfettered profit. All of this designed to shift our political and economic worlds, yes, but also to confuse and destabilize and undermine our ability to see and understand what the actual truth is. It's different from just telling lies. Someone who tells a lie intentionally and someone who tells the truth both understand that there is a truth and choose different ways to deal with it. But the kind of undermining we're talking about here is about overwhelming us so we just can't see or even care what is true anymore. We have no ground to stand on. Truth or untruth become irrelevant. Reality becomes malleable and smudged. So, what are we to do with all of this? How are we to respond? Well, I think there are some obvious answers to those questions, and I'll get there. But I'd like to start smaller and ground our response to the large issues in our practices and responses in our interior and relational lives, partly because I think that's where we have to start, and partly because the big picture is overwhelming sometimes. We often think, not incorrectly, that our spiritual practices of meditation and walking and chanting and reading and crafting and praying Our spiritual practices are ways to get us ready to deal with the ups and downs of the world around us. And in a lot of ways, that is probably true. Being grounded helps us respond more constructively and in ways more faithful to our deep values and commitments. I have stood in this pulpit and said that to you many, many, many times. But also, many religious and spiritual traditions encourage practice in order for us to be able to see the reality of our lives, of our experiences, see the truth in our hearts and in the situations around us. Practices aimed at challenging us to see our commitments to the stories we make up about ourselves and our lives and let them fall away so that we can see reality. See reality and become more and more comfortable with sitting with it, not judging ourselves, not feeling shame or triumph, but seeing clearly what the situation is, being honest and truthful about it with ourselves and resting in that, even if it's uncomfortable, which is not an easy task. It's why it's called practice. Buddhist monk and teacher Thich Nhat Hanh invites us to ask the questions, are you sure, when we face a story we are telling about ourselves and others? He writes, there is a river of perceptions in you, and you should sit down on the bank of this river and contemplate your perceptions. Most of our perceptions, the Buddha said, are false. Are you sure of your perceptions? This question is addressed to you. It is a bell of mindfulness, he writes. Are you sure? So being clear with ourselves about what is true and real in the here and now. And in our relationships, paying attention to truth and how we use it is crucial. There are many, many ways to look at this in relationships, but right now I want to focus on a tendency we have in our liberal religious culture, in our Unitarian Universalist culture and history. We say we are committed to truth and to honoring individual expression and understanding. And so, we might often find ourselves in hurtful situations where one person has said something unkind and cruel or inappropriate to another person, and when asked to think about their behavior, they respond with something like, well, I just call it as I see it. Or, I'm only saying a true thing. Or, you can't stop me from speaking the truth as I see it. I'm sure each of us has been on the painful end of an exchange like this. I'm also pretty certain that many or most of us have been the ones being hurtful. We need to see reality, not judge ourselves. Walter shared with us earlier how the Rotarians are invited to think about truth in relationship and conversation and action. Is it the truth? Is it fair to those concerned? Will it build fellowship and better friendship? Goodwill, and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? He shared Reverend Beth Dana's questions as well. And the Buddha also speaks to the need to pay attention to how we speak to each other. Many people often quote the Buddha saying, if you propose to speak, always ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Now, remember a few weeks ago when we talked about being careful about the true origins of quotations attributed to famous thinkers, especially the Buddha. Do you remember that? There's no record of the Buddha saying those words. However, the Buddha is recorded as saying something like this, monks, a statement endowed with 5 factors is well-spoken, not ill-spoken, is blameless and unfaulted by knowledgeable people. Which 5 factors? Is it spoken at the right time? Is it spoken in truth? Is it spoken affectionately? Is it spoken beneficially? Is it spoken with a mind of goodwill? We hear those words echoed in the Rotarians. We hear them echoed in what Reverend Beth Dana said. Am I sharing the truth? That's only one of the questions we're invited to consider. Is it true? Is this the right time to share it? Am I sharing out of love? Am I sharing it kindly? Do I have good intentions when I share it? When we worry about truth in the world, then, it is good for us to be concerned with the practice of truth in our own lives and relationships. And how do we deal with the untruth flooding our larger social and political worlds? Well, I'm not going to say anything revolutionary to you this morning. You will know all of these things, but I'm going to say them, remind you of them, and reinforce them. We have to hold ourselves and our leaders accountable to the truth. We must demand that the press challenge lies shared in press conferences and public statements. We must defend public forums where truth is honed. We must hold our elected officials to the truth, challenge them when they lie or avoid responding to questions about truth. We must speak up and demand that our elected representatives and the press speak up and act to protect individuals and agencies involved in science and knowledge and the sharing of medical and safety information. We must do what we can do to support the dissemination of true information about disease and climate and health and economic reality. You may have been harmed or aghast at what happened at the White House this week, but I don't know if you've been seeing YouTube or other clips or on the news of town hall meetings with representatives, Democratic representatives, Republican representatives, angry constituents, asking their representatives to do their job over and over again. This gives me great hope. And it can feel, though, that a lot of that is out of our control. I know, but we have a voice with media outfits. We have a voice, as I just said, with our elected representatives. We have a voice in our neighborhoods and social circles, and we need to use that voice for truth. And when we share information that we have found or been shared with, before we hit the send button on that Facebook or Instagram post, or the send button in our email program, before we hit that send button to share the meme or the video clip or the rant or the article, before we hit that send button, we can pause and ask ourselves any of the questions we've been talking about here. Are you sure? Is it true? What will be the effect of my sending it? Does it help anybody make decisions about safety or health or political action? Do I need to be the one sharing it? Do I need to be the one sharing it? Am I just sharing my anger or looking for community, or do I really think this is necessary? Am I sure? We are a religious tradition, grounded in many ways and certainly in a deep commitment to the exploration of the world and our lives to discover the truth of things. Whether in science or in human relations or in the quest for understanding the deepest realities of the holy cosmos, we have declared that we are on the side of love and life and truth. And so, may we be voices of truth. May we practice the quest for truth in our own hearts, in our own relationships, in our neighborhoods, and in our wider societies. May we hold ourselves and those who would claim to inform us and lead us accountable to the truth. And may we say yes to truth and to life, and most of all, to love. My friends, I am grateful to be in this community with you, in the face of what is happening in the world. Each of us brings strength and connection and care to each other, and I am so grateful for you. So may we say yes to truth and to life, and most of all, to love. Friends, will you rise in body or in spirit as we sing our closing hymn together, Just as Long as I Have Breath?
Still
So, for some congregational news. So today, we talked a lot about what is truth. Well, the truth is, we have a garage sale coming up next week, and you all need to be there. 5 days from now, March 7th and 8th, Friday and Saturday, the patio will be filled with wonderful donated items for sale. And you can continue to donate items today through Thursday the 6th. The cutoff for donation is noon on Thursday. Please bring clean items and in boxes to the community room from 9 to 4. There are still a couple of things that we need. We still need more people to bring out the tables and boxes to the patio on Friday morning. So if you can help, please contact Jane Beth Stover. And if you have hangers, wrapping supplies like newspaper, paper and plastic bags, and larger boxes, please bring them to the community room before the 6th. And again, a huge thank you to you folks who are donating items and helping with this sale. Together, it will be a huge success. Please see Jane Beth Stover. She'll be at a table on the patio after service. She'll be there to answer any questions you may have, and please sign up to volunteer. And our second and last announcement, only two. Our second announcement is basically reiterating what Jerry said, to remind you all to join us in celebration of the end of this year's pledge drive for our cheesecake extravaganza. Enjoy some wonderful cheesecake on the patio, and there will be some chairs. Well, I noticed there was actually tons of chairs and tables out there for your comfort. In each breath we take, may we remember that the work of love, justice, and healing is ours to continue, both here and beyond these walls. So now, let us extinguish our chalice, and as we do so, let us say these words on the screen above. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
My friends, these words were shared this week by my colleague, the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and so I wanted to share them as our benediction. We who have no all-knowing deity to whom to relegate all the heartbreaks and complexity of human hatreds often feel alone. We are held only in our search for truth. We who are not sure of what is larger than us are sometimes left with a sense of burden when the world is troubled. Our prayers witness and affirm mindful actions. We witness the voices of generations raised in opposition to one another. We witness strife and conflict and long for the one simple answer we know can never be. Our hope is to be open to new wisdoms and ancient truths. In our angers at the state of the world, we can lash out or are tempted to retreat within our own hearts. But we are known in community. May we strive to know one another, to support one another, to love one another, to challenge one another in community. And so as we head out into the world today, the world where there is so much to deal with that search and that affirmation and that love in our minds and in our wide communities in our hearts. Go in peace, dear ones, to love and serve the world. May it be so.